Hello and welcome back to Equip. We're in the process of helping you identify and name your personal calling. We know that we're all called to glorify God and make disciples. That's general calling. But we're all going to do those things differently. That's where personal calling comes in. You have a unique role in God's kingdom. And to help you identify and name that role, we're using a tool called Your Two Words. And let me say again, your understanding of your calling will likely change over time. I always compare discovering your calling to climbing a mountain. As you go up a mountain, your perspective changes. You gain more clarity, you can see farther. It's the same way with your calling. As life goes on, you tend to gain more clarity about what you're good at and what your passions are. Every time I go through this process, I learn more about my calling. But that doesn't mean that you can't gain clarity right now, today. If you follow this process through, you're going to have more clarity than most Christians ever will when it comes to their purpose in life. So with that, today we come to the pinnacle of naming your calling, your two words. This is what we've been building toward the last few sessions. And remember, your two words complete this sentence. I exist to glorify God and make disciples by. And then you have your two words. The first word is related to your abilities. The second word reflects your passions. And by now, you should have identified words for both your abilities and your passions. That means you already have a prototype for your two words. But today, we're going to focus on finalizing your two words. How can you personalize them? How can you make them more unique to you? Now, I want to start by giving you three tips. 3 tips for finalizing your two words. First, be specific. Sometimes people will go through this process and they will end up with 2 words like this. Worshiping God. Now, those words are great, but here's the problem. They could apply to any Christian because worshiping God describes general calling. It applies to all of us. So try to be more specific. Ask yourself questions. Think through, what's the unique way that I help others worship God? Or what about worshiping God am I passionate about? So for example, you might choose words like igniting joy instead. Maybe your passion is to ignite joy of the Lord in people, which then leads them to worship. That's much more specific than just saying worshiping God. If your 2 words can apply to anyone, they're not specific enough yet. They should be unique to you. Next, be holistic. Now, what do I mean by that? Even though you want your 2 words to be unique to you, you also want them to apply to all spheres of life. So for example, let's say that somebody's a teacher and they come up with the 2 words, teaching students. Now that captures your role as a teacher, but your life is more than being a teacher. Your calling is more than what you do for a living. Although your job can be part of living out your calling, we'll talk more about that later. But instead of teaching students, you could do something like building foundations. That still applies to your role as a teacher, but it can also apply at home when you're investing in other people in church, in your friendships, and in many areas of life. So be holistic. You want your 2 words to apply to all areas of life, not just one. Finally, be creative. And some of you will apply this step more than others. That's okay. But try to look for ways to make your 2 words more unique to you. Sometimes you end up with what you think are your final 2 words, but you can often go one step further to make the words more personal. You can make them better capture your hobbies, your interests, and even your personality. So let me give you a few examples from when we went through this as a staff. Lindsay is our executive ministry director. She does communications for us as well. And the 2 words that she initially came up with were creating excellence. And these words are perfectly fine. She could have been done here. But she pressed into this idea a little bit more. She tried to think through how can she make these words more unique to her? Because she doesn't just create excellence, she takes things the rest of us do and makes them better. She takes things in their raw form and makes them more polished. and she has a taste for things that are fancy. So instead of creating excellence, she came up with the two words, refining diamonds. Again, there was nothing wrong with creating excellence, but when I see refining diamonds, I know immediately that's Lindsay. That fits her. It captures her personality and what she's good at. Here's another example. Andrea, who's our adult ministry director, came up with the words fostering growth. Again, nothing wrong with that. But what's unique about Andrea? Well, she loves to garden. So she took fostering growth and she turned it into cultivating Eden. That captures her love for gardening, and it's a unique way of saying that she wants to help people have a deep relationship with God. She wants to help people have the kind of relationship with God that Adam and Eve had in the Garden of Eden. So same idea, but this is much more unique to Andrea. Here's another example from Pastor Ryan. When he first went through this, he initially came up with something like teaching foundations. Anybody who knows Pastor Ryan knows he's an outstanding teacher. He was actually a math teacher before he was a pastor. But he also loves to build things. So he took teaching foundations and he turned it into building bedrock. He wants to build a firm foundation in people so they can withstand the storms of life. This still captures that idea of teaching, but it does it in a way that's unique to Pastor Ryan. And I've already shared my two words with you. I didn't really come up with a more generic version first, but I landed on unearthing wonders because it captures my background in geology and my love for the outdoors. So be creative with your two words. Make them unique to you. And just as a caveat, it can take some serious time and praying and reflecting to land on two words that fit you well. But again, you'll get out of this what you put into it. Push yourself here, challenge yourself, find words that excite you. If your two words don't excite you, you need to keep digging. Now, I also included some other example two words in your notes. Those are just for reference, but those are actual two words that people have come up with after going through this process. So use those as inspiration for yourself. With that, it's time to finalize your two words. Now, the first thing you're going to do here is write down the one word for your abilities and the one word for your passions from the past couple sessions. That's your starting point. Then, using the tips and the examples I've given you, you're going to list as many two-word combinations as you can. The more, the better. And don't worry about whether an idea is good or not. Just write it down, as many as you can. So here are some examples from when I went through this. You can see I played around with some different first words, some different second words. Some are more creative than others. So go through this yourself, and then what you're going to do is circle 2 or 3 of your favorites and then get feedback from other people. And I actually did this recently. Up until a few weeks ago, I said that my 2 words were awakening wonder. But recently I went through this process again. I got some feedback from people I trust, and they all agreed that unearthing wonders fits me better. So ask people, which 2 words fit me the best? And then finally, using the feedback you get from other people, you're going to write down your final 2 words. Now, there's a chance you're going to be like me. In a few months from now, you might have a light bulb moment and you end up tweaking your 2 words, but just do the best you can for right now. And I also want to remind us of the importance of spending time in prayer as you go through this exercise. Again, the point of this isn't to brag about ourselves. We're trying to figure out how we can best glorify God and make disciples. So spend time in prayer. Say, God, show me how you've uniquely gifted me to invest in other people. Show me the unique passions you've given me. And give me the right words to describe what you want me to do for your glory. Cover this process in prayer. Prayer and godly counsel from other people are so critical to this process. So that's your homework for now. Finish naming your 2 words. And in the sessions ahead, we're going to start talking about what it looks like to live out your 2 words. But for now, focus on naming your personal calling, your 2 words. Now, you'll notice that there's an optional exercise in the next section of your notes. This isn't required by any means, but for those of you who want to, this bonus exercise will help you take your 2 words and write a personal mission statement. Now, why a mission statement? Well, a mission statement works alongside your 2 words. It's a little bit longer, usually about 6 to 12 words. And it not only helps you gain more clarity about your calling, but it can also be useful when you're explaining your calling to other people. Your 2 words will be meaningful to you, but a mission statement often makes more sense to other people. So, for example, if I say my calling is unearthing wonders, that's meaningful to me. That excites me. But when I explain my calling to other people, I often use my mission statement, which is unearthing awe-inspiring wonders in God's word and world. That's much clearer to other people. So again, this exercise is optional, but I do recommend writing a personal mission statement at some point, even if you revisit this exercise later. But even with just your 2 words, you're going to have more clarity about your purpose than most people ever will. Unfortunately, most people, even Christians, go through life without ever really having a clear sense of their personal calling. But what would happen if we as Bedford Alliance Church sent out a fleet of people every week who not only know their personal calling, but are living it out and investing in others to do the same, to find their purpose? Let's live to make that a reality. And let's do it all for His glory.